Hello, Harshil and I today will be presenting on how to do research and model UN. So if you come from an activity like debate or you're just very heavy into research, Model UN is definitely a great way for you to exercise those skills. And research can be done through a variety of ways in Model UN, but the primary way is through a position paper. And I'll delve into more detail into what that is, and so will Harshil later. But that's, I guess, the main way that you would do research in Model UN. The second way would just be by collecting miscellaneous facts and statistics about the topic in relation to your country and what your country policies are. And the last would just be browsing the internet and just getting an understanding of what your topic is about. So position papers I usually do about 1 to 2 weeks before the conference. And you can also win research awards if your position paper is deemed outstanding. Usually it's about 3 to 4 delegates out of 40. So position papers, for those who don't know, are essentially objective research papers written from a country's perspective. And so the position paper has to be specifically about your country. It can't be a generic position paper about the topic. Position papers can range from 1 to 15 pages depending on the type of conference. Usually 15 is a lot, so it's around 3, sometimes 5 pages. And committees can have 2 topics, which means that you have to write position papers for each of the topics, which means it's like 3 to 4 pages for each of those topics. And the format of the position paper is usually established by the conference. The conference determines what content you need, and they'll usually have a rubric also. But the position paper's typical structure is first the general background of the topic and a general understanding of the topic. The second is just describing previous action that's already been done on the topic. The third is your country's position and what your country's policies are towards the topic. And the last is just possible solutions for the topic.
All right. So as Krish was saying earlier, in the position papers, you need to have like your background information as well as international action, then your country's info, and then your solutions. But here I'm going to talk about how you should do the research and how you should take notes. So at Behrman, you're not required to write a position paper except for one committee, and that is GRULAC. So for those of you that are not in GRULAC, I don't recommend you write a position paper, just take a bunch of notes. So the first thing you should do is look at the background guide. Read the background guide, take notes on it, and look at the sources linked to the end of the guide, or look at the UN resolutions that are mentioned in the topic in the background guide. And you should go through all of those and get information. Then you should search up more info about the topic. The background guide should provide some guiding questions and provide you some sort of provide you with some direction to move forward with your research, and then you could just do the remaining research with like other sources like Wikipedia, news sources, articles, and other things. Don't cite Wikipedia. You should probably go to the sources that Wikipedia cites, but other than that, it should be fine. Now, the next section in most position papers is past international action. You need to write in your position paper what the UN or other UN committees or just other international bodies have done about this issue. So you can search up this issue. You could find UN resolutions. If you search up this issue, you would often find some UN resolutions related to this. You could see what they did and their failures, and if those goals actually passed or if the resolutions were implemented properly and successful, and you could see those, you could write about those. And the good part is, often one UN resolution might link you to another. It will say, adding on to this previous resolution, we're gonna do this, and then you can go to that previous resolution. Or you could say, it might say like we're renewing the goals set in this previous resolution, and then you could look at that. Or we're following up to this convention, and then you could look at the resolutions passed at that convention. And now the third part is you have to find your country's info. So basically, search up stats about your country relating to the issue. Search up first if this issue is a global issue, then you should think about how your country relates to the issue, the magnitude of the issue in your country, and what people believe about it. If it's a regional issue and it's not in your country, you should still research what your country would think about it. And you should think about maybe what neighboring countries think about it and why they think about it, what concerns neighboring countries have that are actually involved in that issue and why they have those concerns. Now you should think whether your country would have the same concerns or it would have different concerns based on that, what its viewpoint would be. Now the final part, you have to find solutions. This is actually the most important part. And this part, you have to use your own thinking. This is very little citations. You could look at past UN resolutions to see what worked or what didn't, and you could cite those. Or you could look at maybe potential problems, you could cite those, but most of this has to be your own thinking. Now at bare as I said earlier, none of the committees require position papers except GRULAC. So if you're not in GRULAC, I don't recommend you write a position paper, just take notes. No research awards, and yeah, basically just understand your country's viewpoint. Now, here are some common questions. I said earlier, what if you can, what should I do if I can't find any information about my country? Not all countries are actively involved in it, but some of the countries that are actively involved in it might have concerns or might have certain viewpoints. And you should study why those countries have those viewpoints towards the issue, and whether your country would probably express the same concerns or same viewpoints, or it would disagree with that country. And then you could figure out what your country would think relating to that issue. You should always cite your sources. Always cite your sources. At the end, you should put MLA format, and I'm going to show you one of my position papers later on. And basically, you should put in-text citations as well. Now, to remember from which source the information comes from, you should probably, when I take notes, I would create a bulleted list of all of the sources, and in the sub-bullet points from each source, I would put the information from that source. If you're unsure about the guidelines, if you're unsure about the guidelines for the paper, you should email the chair. But if you're unsure about how to write one or any of the content, then you should probably email us. You could email me 22harshilg@studentsatharker.org, 23krishm@studentsatharker.org, or harkermun@gmail.com. Now here, two winning papers. This is my winning paper at Santa Clara Valley Model UN last January of 2020. I was Costa Rica. The topic was increasing global access to education. So first I gave the topic description, so historical background. By the way, each conference has different guidelines on the position paper. So some conferences require certain sections, some conferences require longer ones or shorter ones. You have to determine which sections and which topics section topics you need in your position paper. You should look at your committee's the conference website, and your committee subpage on that website will have the position paper guidelines. So at this conference, you need historical background, you need the current situation, you need some issues, and then the second section is past United Nations action. This this is basically, I talked about UN resolutions. And I mostly cited the same resolution. So I have the Incheon Declaration, I have Sustainable Development Goals, I have the Dakar Framework. I just have a lot of these things, a lot of these issues. Now I have my country policy. The good part is this is a global issue, global access to education. So every country would have a policy. So that's why I put Costa Rica's policy here. But if it was something like, I think the second topic I had to debate here was um, the rights of children in armed conflict. Costa Rica doesn't have a military, but still I could look at I could look at maybe Nicaragua or what other neighboring countries or even other countries that have this issue and what viewpoints they have towards it, and what Costa Rica would do to help those countries or what Costa Rica's viewpoint would be. So here I have Costa Rica's policy about education. Then I have proposed solutions. This is actually the most important part of it. And if you look at your rubric, in this conference, the proposed solutions were actually weighted as much as the rest of the paper combined. Proposed solutions were 45%, the rest of the paper was another 45%, and 10% was just the overall impression of the paper. Because this is your original thinking. So your proposal, what's actually more important is your anticipated opposition and arguments in defense. So you need to propose a solution. You need to put arguments in favor of that solution. And then you need to write, at this conference, you need to write what other people might think about your solution that would oppose it. And then you need to put arguments in defense, arguments that would refute other people's claims to defend your solution. And at the end, I have all the references. As you can see, I actually use EasyBib to to put the citations, but they don't care. They don't check your citations that much, like all the specifics like you do in history class with like Miss Palman and like Noodle tools. But still, just show that you at least put some effort into actually formatting it somewhat properly. Oh, by the way, here I have a bunch of um, UNESCO resolutions. I can show you one if you want. All right, we'll wait for it. Yes. So here, all right, it's loading here. So this is unesdoc.unesco.org, unesdoc or UNESCO doc. So this is the Global Education for All meeting at Muscat, Oman in May 2014. This is actually the resolution they have. And look here. It says we acknowledge the worldwide movement of education for all, initiated in Jomtien. This this you see here is referencing a previous resolution. So after you're done reading this, you could look at this one. This Jomtien resolution 1990. Reaffirmed in Dakar 2000. When you're done reading this, you can also look at this Dakar one. This education for all agenda. You could look at this education for all agenda. Basically, it says everything. These are the goals for 2015. These are the targets. These are just like resolutions. Now I can find maybe another one to show you. Let's see. This is the Dakar framework for action. Remember I said here it referenced Dakar. Where did it go? Here it referenced acknowledged world movement for education for all was reaffirmed in Dakar in 2000. I went to that Dakar framework, and here it is. This is the education agenda at Dakar, Senegal. So yeah, you can see here. You have promote EFA policies. This is education for all. Let's see, it's 78 pages. Yes. So often these would have like a preamble, kind of an introduction or preamble, which says what they're trying to solve. And then it would have like a framework, and just go to the parts that you need. So yeah, I guess that's it. Now I'm going to show you one of Krish's papers. This is a Los Gatos Model UN, also winning paper. Here, you needed, I think, a two-page paper. Yeah, two-page paper, and the instructions, like the directions, were much shorter, and they're different. So keep that in mind. It was about like role of military-grade weapon and police enforcement. He was Malaysia. So as you can see, he didn't put in-text. He put like, I think this is APA style citations with endnotes. So instead of footnotes or in-text, it's endnotes where he's linking them to these references here. And you can see here, he also did some sort of formal citation, probably EasyBib or Noodle Tools or something like that. And let's see. Seems to be one of his sources, you can see here. Yeah, this is one of Krish's sources, the UN Office of High Commissioners for Human Rights. So this is basically another resolution, another like resolution or formal document that he wrote that Krish found. And yeah. All right. That's it. If you have any questions, email me at 22harshilg@students.harker.org. I specialize mostly in the conference preparation, position papers, and research. You could also email 23krishm@students.harker.org if you want to talk to Krish. If you have just a general question, you could email the secretariat at harkermun@gmail.com. Thank you.